start the episode, please. Hal?
I can't
Are you
do
there?
that, Randy.
God damn it, Hal, start the episode. Welcome to Read, Watch, Play, your dive into the stories we love and how they're adapted. Nick and I are en route to Jupiter, and we have been flying the ship alone, but today, one of our crew is coming out of hibernation, so we thought we'd bring them on the episode. This is episode 21, and we are covering 2001: A Space Odyssey. Aidan, welcome to the show, and hope your hibernation went well. Can you walk yet?
Yeah, no, I feel very well rested. Thank you for having me.
You're adjusted now?
Yeah.
This is exciting as Aidan is technically our second guest, but our first guest covering a specific topic. Aidan is a musical artist based in Atlanta. They make electronic music with vintage synthesizers and their saxophone. That's amazing. I didn't know you played the saxophone.
They rock the sax.
Yeah.
Oh, thanks. I try.
Yeah, we might have to get some sax overtones for this.
Totally. Oh, yeah.
They're a big sci-fi fan and consider the genre a large influence in their music. Aidan, welcome to the show. Pretty pumped.
Hello. Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here.
And hey Nick, how you doing?
Yeah, cool dude.
Oh, hey Nick. Oh, what's up?
Just cut me out.
Yeah, forgot about you. So we're actually doing this because Aidan, you gifted this book to Nick. Is that right?
I did. Yes, it was a Christmas gift from me.
It was.
Nick.
And Nick, had you, prior heading into this, had you read 2001? Had you watched it? Or was this all fresh coming in?
This was all fresh coming in. To be honest, if Aidan hadn't given me the book, I probably never would have watched this movie. I've heard so many things about how this is like so pretentious and such a movie lover's thing that I was like, this is not for me. I'm going to get angry. I'm still mad at Stanley about what he did on The Shining, so I'm not watching his other movies.
Yeah, just running it back to Stanley. Aidan, I assume if you gifted this, you enjoy this quite a bit.
Yeah. It's funny because, and I feel a little fake for this, because when I gave him the book for this, I had actually never read the book myself.
Yeah.
I'd read the short story that it was based off of, but I had never read the actual, I guess the full novel. I'm sure we're going to get more into how it's intertwined with the movie, which was also new information for me at the time. But the movie I've seen a couple times, and I really like it.
Yeah. You said you like sci-fi a lot. Outside of this, what are kind of some of the sci-fi space type stuff you enjoy? Movie wise.
Oh yeah. Well, I grew up a lot on Star Wars.
Oh yeah.
I was a big Star Wars kid. Grew up watching all the movies, and I was in the Star Wars: The Clone Wars generation as well.
We're watching it now.
Oh, nice! Really?
Yeah, we're on halfway through season 3. We've been wanting to watch it before Ahsoka, just to have the full impact.
Yeah,
so
you're about to break through. I think season 4 is where it starts really.
It started getting good.
Yeah,
for sure.
It's a little slow at the beginning. But it gets way better. But yeah, I'm a big Twilight Zone fan as well.
Nice.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Nick and I just rode the Tower of Terror. Felt like we were in the Twilight Zone.
Yeah, that's classic.
Or no, yeah.
We did do that.
We did do that, but we were in Disney. Yeah.
Oh, y'all,
we were in Disney.
Neither of y'all wrote it.
I forgot we went in January, so I wrote it then. So I just subbed Nick into that experience and forgot that you weren't actually there.
That's kind of cute. Oh, that's nice.
I was there in spirit.
Yeah, you were there in spirit. Yeah. Nick, do you like space stories? Does that genre intrigue you? I know obviously you're into fantasy and sci-fi, but does the idea of space intrigue you as a concept?
Yeah, obviously. I mean, it is the last frontier, the final frontier, whatever they call it, made in Hollywood. So it's, I don't have to go very far to get to it. No, I love stories like this. I actually and I know we'll talk about this. I love the book. I read a lot of like the sci-fi I do read. Space travel is definitely a part of it. I don't read too many things that are like futuristic on a planetary setting.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, no, it is intriguing, and it was interesting because I had not watched this until we were planning to do this either. I'd not read it, I had not watched it, and I was pretty pumped. You know, it kind of felt like a big hole in like a movie, you know, a movie fan's sort of backlog.
Yeah.
So I was excited to get to it. When did you first see it, Aidan?
You know, I actually saw it pretty late. It was something that I was also a bit like, I guess, turned off to, because I also kind of had this like, I don't want to say like, I had a preconceived notion of it being a bit like, oh, this is a pretentious like film bro movie. I'm okay on it. But I watched it probably, I didn't see it for the first time until about 2.5, 3 years ago. And I've seen it probably about like 4 times since. I do love to throw it on like when people are at my house for like a party or something.
Yeah.
Especially when like the party started to die down. Which unfortunately will backfire, as like the only people that will stay at the house are the people that want to watch 2001.
Yeah. It's good. It's a good way to clear people out.
Yeah. But people will linger. They will linger.
Yeah.
They will talk.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I know what you mean though. It's when you have something like this, you go in with so many like preconceptions of like what this is going to be. And it feels like either you're going in with the mindset of like, I'm really going to love this, it's supposed to be amazing, or you go in with like almost the mindset where you're like looking to poke holes. You're like, can this really be that good?
Yeah.
Like, why? And it's like both of those things are working kind of against whatever you're watching. And it's so difficult to just sit back and be like, let me just forget everything I know about this and just see if I like it. It's so hard to do that with something like this.
Especially with such a slow burn as this, with a movie that has like a 25-30 minute just monkey sequence in the beginning, you know.
Not only that, there's 24 minutes of dead time in the movie. Just nothing happening, no sound, nothing on the screen, just you're looking at a blank screen. Every time the screen goes dark for them to go to a new place, 4 minutes, just nothing.
That's definitely part of it, is like just like the, oh, are we sure like the movie's on right now? Like, is the movie starting? And then of course you see like,
thought.
Oh yeah, and then you got to wait 35 minutes to figure out you're not watching Planet of the Apes. I mean, what is going on? Like, I'm getting angry. I'm gonna stop.
Yeah,
please, Nick, control yourself. I've never seen you this animated before. Please calm down.
I'm sure there's like,
sick of it.
I'm sure every single person who watches this, not only do they do exactly what Aidan just said, where you're sitting there and you're like, did I get a bad copy of this movie? Because I was literally thinking that because I bought a physical version of this and I was like, did it start playing? Like, is this not the right one? And then it's going for like 30 minutes and you know everybody watching this, and I don't think you really understand what or what's going on screen and like why is that important to the story right away. And everybody's probably just looking at themselves like, what is happening? I'm sure that it's so intentional, but it would be hilarious to just see people in theaters in 1968 and like see what's going on there. Because this was probably also just so different than anything else coming out at the time.
That's definitely something I think a lot about, is like if I could, like a lot of movies that I wish I could see like in the theater when they're coming out. 2001, obviously, like honestly, isn't one of my favorite movies of all time, but I would love to see what that was like in 1968.
Yeah. I mean, and it is crazy to think, and not to stomp too much on some other stuff, but like this was before we actually went to the moon, which is like unbelievable to think about.
Yeah.
That this was pre-actual us going to space and being on the moon. So I can't imagine what sitting there like must have been like. Like we were in the heat of like getting ready to go there, but it still hadn't happened yet. It's just I can't even imagine what this was like seeing for the first time before space travel was actually a thing. So
the heat of the space race and I think it plays into that kind of aesthetic of because I would say like one of my favorite parts of sci-fi is like the retrofuturism of it, and this movie is like riddled with that. Like when they're in the the space station that kind of feels like an airport, and like all their fashion, it just is like
I know it. Every time I said this when we were watching it, but you see that first ship flying and it says Pan America or Pan American Airlines on it, and every time I see Pan Am, I'm always thinking, I'm like, what happened to this airline? It is in every period piece of like 1950s to 1970s like travel. Where did it go? What happened?
Leonardo DiCaprio took all their money, remember?
Oh, is that in
Catch Me If You Can? That's Pan Am.
Oh, damn, that's a tragedy.
Yeah, but I don't know. It is a weirdly a period piece too. Like you said, yet also being futuristic. It's also really interesting being where we're at now. Obviously, we're past the year 2001, but seeing just like what the fears and anxieties and thoughts of what space travel would be like and what the world would be like then. It's always fun to just see what people thought we were going to be doing at this time. And it's never as cool as what they projected it to be.
Yeah.
They did it. They showed FaceTime, essentially.
They did. And chess.com. Chess.com's in
yeah, you're right.
I was thinking of Nick playing chess during that scene. I also like in the book when they say that Hal loses half the time to just make the person he's playing feel better about themselves. Yeah. And I was like, oh yeah, Hal would definitely be throwing games to Nick just to make Nick feel better on the ship.
Yeah, I mean,
I could beat Hal.
Hal's not the only one. I didn't want to bring this up, but now that we're on the topic, Hal's not the only one that's thrown games of chess to Nick.
Okay. Time out. I'm pulling it up.
All right.
Because
he's about to bring up his chess on rap.
I am like 27-1 against Hayden. Hayden.
Who's Hayden? Is that Hal? Hayden? Is that
the Hal version of Aidan?
Oh my god,
Nick! I'm sensing some distress.
I'm done.
Oh my god!
Well, before we make Nick too mad, just some quick housekeeping stuff. I'm not going to go through our usuals. We got a bunch of episodes in the backlog. Go ahead and listen to them. We come out every other Tuesday. Nick, if people want to follow the show, where can they see us, watch us? I don't know. What do you tell people on the social media end? I don't know. You do that.
YouTube, Spotify, and Apple. First and foremost, please go give us 5-star ratings on all of those platforms. If you have less than a 5-star rating, we have a Gmail you can send it to. And that is readwatchplaypod@gmail.com and readwatchplaypodcast on Instagram. Check it out. And we'll have some stuff about Aidan in there too as this comes out.
Yeah. Well, we're going to do plugs at the end as well. Aidan is also on Spotify. You can where else? Like
Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube Music, most
perfect
streaming platforms.
Under Caughy.
Snapchat music. If you want to make a Snapchat. Yes, Under Caughy.
Okay. Caughy.
Caughy. Yeah. Sorry. What'd you say, Nick?
Snapchat. Wait, we got to go back to Snapchat music first.
Like Snapchat, like
that's like a thing. Like
if you take a snap. Like with music playing. Do you know how they do that?
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I thought you were saying Snapchat had this whole streaming service I've never heard of.
Oh, man.
Mine was...
Try to keep up.
Yeah.
I was like, God, how old am I?
I was thinking the same thing. Spoilers wise, obviously we're going to spoil 2001: A Space Odyssey. The book is a little bit different. And I'm sure we'll get into the nuances of that. But if you haven't seen this movie, we'll tell you if you should see it or not. I think we'll have some differing opinions on that.
It feels like a debate set up with Randy in the middle.
I know. I'm the moderator. Rapid fire questions. Nick, how do you want to hit these?
Okay. Aidan, what does HAL stand for?
Damn it, I should have looked this up. I had the opportunity. Literally last night, I was like, I can look this up right now. I can look so smart on the podcast. I don't remember what HAL stands for. Do you remember what HAL stands for, Randy?
No, not at all. I don't know if I could guess one of the acronyms, H, A, or L.
The H is heuristically.
Definitely not. Didn't even know that was a
Then
word.
Yeah.
Heuristically programmed algorithmic computer. That's a tough word.
Wait, what's the L?
Yeah.
It's the AL from algorithm.
Well, that's
algorithmic.
That was cheap. That's not a true acronym.
Cut that out.
Yeah. Yeah.
I did.
Arthur Clarke.
You're like, I didn't have the question of the
Screw that guy.
I'm just reading the questions off the sheet here.
What do you got next?
Randy, did the movie have enough monkeys for you?
It was sufficient in the apes for me.
Only sufficient. That is a shocking take.
Okay. I don't know. I felt deeply uncomfortable when they were beating that monkey to death with the bone. Like that was just too much for me. I think I'm too sensitive for that stuff.
Are you serious? Are you serious right now?
I'm dead serious.
Oh wow! Oh, damn, I'm sorry. Yeah, it is pretty like.
So
it's. I'm like half kidding, but I'm also half serious that I was like deeply uncomfortable.
It is uncomfortable to watch. Like it's not like gory, but it's just like kind of like. Oh,
I'm like stop hitting him.
Yeah. It's exactly it. Yeah.
It's like he's dead already.
Aidan, what's the best scene in the movie?
The best scene in the movie. Can I give two answers to this, or does it have to be quick? Just one. One.
Just one. No context.
No context. The initial, just short fire response is when he's shutting down Hal.
Okay.
That's the best. That's the best scene in the movie.
And then Randy, final question: should this movie have been shorter?
It could.
I agree.
Yeah.
Nice.
Hot take.
Yeah. I'll save where I think, but I don't mean that as an indictment on the movie. But
I think that's a room temperature take. Actually, I think that's a very agreeable take.
And normally I'm not a shorter movie is better type of person. But there was some aspects I would change.
Mm-hmm.
But who am I, to hit any of that? Synopsis wise, if you are listening to this and you've never seen it, I'm going to do my best here. 2001: A Space Odyssey is a story of human discovery, exploration, and evolution. In the dawn of man time, whatever they call it, primitive living apes discover a strange artifact has been buried in the ground outside their cave. The main ape, Moonwatcher, we don't know his name in the movie, discovers the ability to use bones as tools, forever altering the course of evolution, as they can now ward off predators, hunt for food, and, to my chagrin, beat the shit out of their rival ape gang for water. Flash forward to the then future of 2001, and we are in the space age of planetary exploration. A similar artifact has been discovered on the moon, and a new mission is launched to further understand it. A small crew of 5 go on the Jupiter mission along with their 6th member, a supercomputer named Hal, to understand the origins of this artifact and continue to push humankind's understanding of the universe further. Did I miss any big beats of what's going on here?
Did you write that?
I wrote that.
That's great.
That's really good.
Yeah, I thought that was really.
You did say evolution.
Yeah,
but
I was just adding a little flair to it.
I wasn't gonna say anything.
Listen, I'm gonna butcher so many words. I need to bring somebody down with me. Like,
I will say something to say. It's like, I think we should just be very candid about it. It's like hearing that synopsis. If you were to just watch the movie and then hear that, you would be like, what the heck are you talking about? Like without the context of the book, it's like, yeah. Because I remember my friend that had watched 2001 with me for the first time.
Yeah.
This is my old roommate. His name's Joshua, who, by the way, I will say is a film bro. He did graduate with a film major.
Yeah.
And so he was like, oh yeah, we got to watch this. He's like, and we finished. He's like, just by the way, there's not really much plot. And I remember, I'll never forget, like when the monolith starts screaming at them and it switches.
Yeah.
And, I'm looking very confused. He's like, oh yeah, that never gets answered, by the way. So that was just the tone of what it feels like to just see the movie without the context of the book.
Yeah. Yeah. It was strange because I'm assuming we all watched before we read. Is that accurate?
Mm-hmm. Well, so Nick, you watched the second half before you read.
No, I watched the first half of the movie with you, then I read the book, and then I watched the second half of the movie by myself.
See, that's such an interesting way to go about it. I feel like arguably maybe the most interesting. Like I think because you get to be very confused in the first half, and then you read the book, you're like, okay, and then you watch the second half, and you're like, okay. Which I think the second half kind of included the stuff with Hal, right? And then like that kind of move after that.
Yeah. And I think I was too stupid to really understand, even in the book, what was going on at the end. It was kind of going right over my head still.
Nobody understands.
I think I generally understand up to the point of the acid trip into the Stargate. And then I'm like, I think I know what's happening, but I'm not entirely confident.
Okay. Is it too early in the podcast for us to talk about the ending, like the trip?
Let me hit the background on the book.
Okay.
And then let's just get into it.
Okay.
And then full tarps off from there. Background on the book. So, I mean, we've flirted talking about this a little bit. So the book was written concurrently with the film and actually was published after release. And it was written by Arthur C. Clarke and Stanley Kubrick. They shared writing duties, but on the book, Clarke was the sole author. And also, if you both have any comments or further knowledge, feel free to jump in at any point. The Arthur Clarke was picked as Stanley Kubrick wanted to tell, in his own words, at that point in time, the greatest sci-fi story. And he was looking at other writings going on, and he really liked what Clarke was doing with some of his short stories that he was written. This was really based off of The Sentinel, which was one of them, and what was the other one called? Encounter in the Dawn. Did either of you check out have you read any of the short stories? I meant to, but I didn't. You did?
I have a copy of it. I can show you off if you like, but it's, I really like it. It's, to say that it's inspired off of it, I think is a good way to put it, because it is a very different, also it's a short story. So it's like the whole format is there, but the general feeling of kind of like the beacon aspect of the monolith and kind of like there was a greater being or like alien form that's like always been here. That feeling is very resonant in it, which Okay,
cool. Yeah. I want to check it out. You haven't read it, Nick?
No, but I mean, I was looking through your facts, and I really liked the way Arthur C. Clarke wrote this book. Like the style in which he writes, I found very great, like for me. So I am absolutely going to pick up more of his stuff, and I would recommend, if you like to read sci-fi, you do the same.
Yeah. It was funny. I was, this movie is so old that there's so much behind the scenes stuff out there. And it's really interesting hearing him talk about writing with Stanley Kubrick and just the ideas. And it was almost like they were just devouring as much sci-fi material as they could find and seeing like what concepts interested them that they'd want to include, also based on what Clarke had, previously written. And I think the hope initially was they wanted to have the novel come out first, free of kind of the constraints of the film, and then write the screenplay. And this is a quote. This came up during an interview that said there were a number of differences between the book and the movie. The novel, for example, attempts to explain things much more explicitly than the film does, which is inevitable in a verbal medium. The novel came about after they did about 130-page prose treatment of the film. Arthur took all the existing material plus an impression of some of the rushes that they had to do, and kind of ran out of budget on the movie and wrote the novel. As a result, there's a difference between the novel and the film, and I think the divergence between the two works is interesting. This was from a Kubrick interview. He actually said this, that he found kind of what Clarke did after interesting in regards to the story. And there was kind of this issue going on, not issue between them. It's hard to know what actually transpired between the two, but people felt there was a disagreement amongst Kubrick and Clarke for how clear they wanted the explanations of the story to be, where Clarke was opting for a very clear outcome.
There's something I'd like to say about this.
Please. Yeah.
I was really just about to say, I was like, because I don't know a lot about Kubrick on a personal level. And to be honest, I've read a good amount of Arthur C. Clarke. I don't know. I haven't like watched a ton of his interviews, but Arthur C. Clarke's writing is super, I would describe as technical. Like a lot of it is very, in fact, like that's might even though I enjoy him a lot as a writer, what deters me from reading it more is just like, I sometimes want to read something that's a bit more expressive and focus on, I guess, the viscerals rather than just like the mechanisms and everything that's going on, which it works really well for sci-fi. But I could absolutely imagine that him working with Stanley Kubrick, that they were like creatively like, no, we should not. You know what I mean? Like it's crazy to think about that.
Yeah, and I also wonder though, like, did those creative differences result in something really interesting because they were both pushing so hard for what they wanted in separate areas? And at the end, I don't know. I feel like as an enjoyer of stories, I feel like I kind of got both. Where I was like, I can have the completely visual experience of the movie.
Yeah.
And I can also have the answers or a more technical book. So it kind of worked for me that they were different. Nick, how'd you feel about that? Okay, moving on.
I would have liked for them to have found more of a middle ground for the movie.
I'm sorry. I do have to agree. I actually do have to agree with Nick on this. I do. I think it's cool because the book is very much so towards the way of Arthur C. Clarke. But the movie, if we're going to talk about the question, who won the movie? Kubrick won the movie. Like, let's just say, like, it's just it's just Kubrick vibes. Like, it's not. Which is, I agree with both of you. I agree with you, Randy, that it's cool that we got both of them. But sorry, Nick, I didn't mean to interject there. But as you were saying,
that's. Yeah, just like, or there was just a couple points where I thought a little bit of context would have completely changed how much I enjoyed the movie.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're going to have 87 minutes of dead air time anyway, you can use 2 of them to give me like Moonwatcher's name or something, or just like a text on the screen, call it Moonwatcher. I don't know, something. Like.
Yeah, it was funny. I was shocked when I picked up the book, and I'm kind of done with the background anyway. And it starts, and you get this name Moonwatcher. I'm like, is that what he's called?
Yes, that's exactly. I'm like,
who the fuck is Moonwatcher?
Yeah. The most disappointed I was in the book. You get almost this ape rave going on with the monolith the first night, and I'm like, we were denied a monkey dance party like in this movie.
Can we
are
talk
you kidding
about
me?
That? Oh my god, the book was so superior with the monkey sequence. I'm not gonna let's just, I know we talk about I could have used more monkeys in the movie if it meant that we got the the testing sequence that was described in the book. That was so interesting.
And that's, you can show, you don't have to have a lot of context. You can do that on screen. We can watch that happen.
Yeah.
He could have done that. Mm-hmm. If you're going to have them on screen for 35 minutes anyway, like legitimately, not even me, this is not hyperbole. They're on screen for like 35 minutes. If you're going to do that, instead of spending all your time watching a leopard jump on a real human being, why don't we just use some tools or something? I don't know.
Save the leopard for casting, all right?
Yeah, that was crazy. Kubrick's like, no, I think we're going to need a leopard to jump on somebody.
So you mentioned that you like we were talking about the apes part, and that was something you liked. Was there anything else in the novelization, Aidan, that you liked?
I would say...
Or what do you think this did well?
I have to agree with Nick that it was... like Arthur C. Clarke's writing style worked so well with the story, I thought. Like the technicalities and the way that he wrote, I think worked so well with the story. And we can go, I know this is a bigger topic, so we can go into this more later, but the trip sequence, if you compare the movie version of that versus the actual written description of it, is like night and day, to be honest. I actually haven't read 2001. I've only done the audiobook of it.
Yeah.
And funny enough, it was actually when we were driving from Texas, right after I gave you the book, Nick. But I remember I was driving, and during that whole chapter, if not the 2 chapters, that it's like just going in on that experience, my jaw was dropped. I was like, this is so cool. I think it's like hearing that was like how Interstellar like started to make me feel a little bit. You know what I mean? Like it was,
yeah.
Yeah. So I enjoyed that aspect of the book way more. But
Yeah. I mean, with those sort of technicalities too, I think he adds a fun level of surrounding detail that is tough in a visual medium like a movie. Those things fly by so fast. Like you can't dwell on them, where in a book you can dwell on those things a little bit longer.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is like I really enjoyed hearing how like the international cooperation of like the space station worked. That like all these countries had different, gates that they went in. I liked understanding why the food they ate looked like slime because it had to stick to the plates and things like that. So you just get this level of detail, or even knowing what Haywood Floyd's role was and like how he got to be there and why he was so important. Like that stuff was really fun to read about. And I thought that was really great.
I agree.
Great take.
No, what else did you like, Nick? Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to build on that because it's not a super long part of the book.
Yeah.
Like those things you're describing, it's only a couple pages here and there, but I think it really adds like an extra layer to the world. And if we're gonna, we can talk about this in world building if you want, but like having that knowledge makes watching it again even more interesting when you understand who these characters are, how they are supposed to be, intertwined in real life and their importance in geopolitical affairs.
Yeah, I agree. I thought a lot of that stuff was just really good, and you can see them attempting to do their absolute best to show some of that. The other thing I was thinking about was the toilet. Like in a movie, you can only get the glance at like the toilet sign and like, oh yeah, how does that work? But in the book, he can go into a little bit more detail when writing it, which is
was
cool.
Wild.
Yeah. I was like, I don't know if I want to read about this, but I am kind of curious.
Especially when you're having an audiobook format, it's like you don't get to control when it's like you can't, but it's like it's just going and you're like kind of letting it,
along for the ride. You both talked about things you liked. I think I'm a little bit in the middle on this one of something that didn't work for me as well. And I think this is because to me, this is something the movie did really well, was I didn't like a lot of the changes that went on during the Hal Bowman pool scenes in the book. And I would say I didn't like them as much, but I almost wish there was a blended version where in the book, I do like that I get insight into Bowman and Pool's thoughts a little bit more of what's going on in their heads. But I think I really missed in the book there was no secret pod conversation they had where they're questioning Hal, the Pool sketching and Hal doing the kind of psychiatric analysis on him. The accusation from Hal that like it was a little bit more overt in the movie that this is due to human error, not him. And so I missed a little bit of that stuff in the book. I thought it was like everything pre Hal, Bowman, and Pool, I thought Clarke did a really great job of explaining, and everything post them, I thought Clarke did a great job of explaining. But it was like that middle part, it just felt to me like Kubrick was in his bag, with some of that.
That's very fair. Yeah.
Was there anything you didn't like about the book? Or sorry, go ahead, Nick.
No, I was going to say, I think that is probably the correct take on that. Like, no, like if you're talking about the movie, like Kubrick nailed the middle part of that movie.
Yeah,
it was so like visually and just understanding the emotions of everybody and what's going on. I think Kubrick S tier, like above A+ there.
Yeah.
I think that was perfect. And I agree that after reading it and then kind of watching part of that again, I think I was like, yeah, Kubrick nailed this. It was better. I think that's the correct take. Not that
it's Nick. Nick's seal of approval.
No, you nailed it.
Kubrick
I spent so much time sitting up in bed, like thinking about this, and you nailed it in like 3 sentences. And now I just feel like I wasted my time.
What would you say was your favorite section of the book? I'll go Aidan first.
Oh, by far, I feel like I've already kind of revealed
The
my
Stargate.
take. The Stargate was like great. I was like, wow, this is nuts. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's so much context of what went on with the movie that I'm thinking this is the part where like they ran out of budget and just didn't have enough time. But the idea that there was another sort of monolith or obelisk, whatever they call that, at Saturn, was like, oh my God, there's another one further out here, because they put it in the like room he was in at the end. But it was almost like what they were flying out, and it was like in the center of one of the rings, I think, or something.
And it's just the details are that's, if we're talking about the middle section, is when Kubrick was in his bag. I think we talked about the monkeys. The monkey was great. The Stargate, like Arthur C. Clarke is just like like fire on the pen, is just like he's just going crazy. It's very love how detailed it is.
The like you get snapped back so hard at the end, because it's probably, I would say, 10 to 15 chapters, and the chapters are very short in this book, 10 to 15 chapters of description of Bowman, getting to this next further exploration point, and all of the descriptions of, the solar systems and the universe and what's going on at Saturn. And it's just so far out there beyond like what we can even comprehend as humans. And then he lands inside the monolith, and it's just a regular hotel room. And it's just like, it's so disorienting at first that like, if I hadn't seen the movie, I would have been like, what the fuck is going on?
It's so cool.
It was insane. It was not at all what I was expecting, movie wise or even book wise. Nick, what was your favorite part of the book?
I really enjoyed the space toilet. No, I'm just kidding. I thought the intro with Moonwatcher and how the monolith got there, and that exposition of what the monolith is actually doing, made me. I was hooked. That was the hook for me, and I knew I wasn't putting the book down. And I agree that the end of the book was fantastic as well, but I think I was captivated. I was like, oh my God, this makes so much sense. I need to know where this book is going.
It's a great way to put it.
It's such an interesting premise.
Yeah, it was. I mean, even book and movie, and movie because I saw that first. I was really not expecting this movie to just open with kind of that Dawn of Time scroll or whatever. I'm like, oh, this is where we're starting. Okay. It is. It's especially when it's named 2001. Like, I'm heading into this thinking this is going to be at that point, retro futuristic sort of story. And then I'm like, okay, no, we're literal monkeys right now. Aidan, what do you think the sort of message or theme of this story is? And do you think it differs from the movie? Like, do you think the book and the movie are trying to tell the same story, or are those different?
Personally, I think for the most part, to my understanding, I received the story pretty similarly. Just Kubrick's, I guess, when Kubrick had more control over it, I feel like it was way more nebulous and way more for interpretation, or the book is way more clearly. I think you said it very well, where it's like about like human discovery, and I think there's very much so like this kind of theme of like something being always with us. And that's I will say that the movie, something I will appreciate about the kind of how removed the movie is from telling you what's going on, is that you get this very kind of sinister sense of like it's disturbing how the monolith is shown in the movie, and how it's there since the start. And I really do like how the monolith is there right before the monkeys kind of start using tools, and kind of shows like, okay, well, whatever this thing is, we don't understand what it is, has like always been with us, and it's still here. And again, I don't know exactly what the story was trying to tell. You know what I mean? As far as like beyond that, but I do really like that, the visceral feeling behind that.
Yeah, I agree. Me as well. Nick, do you feel similar telling of the story? To be determined.
I don't.
I would shout out a few of my favorite. These are kind of the detailed things. They had some fun predictions from the book of what life was going to be like. Three that I pulled out where they talked about they're kind of in an intense famine period at this point in time in the 2001 portion. They were doing meatless days then as they were running out of crops, which is something that, meatless Mondays is a thing now. So it was kind of an accurate prediction. There was a quarantine they mentioned in 1998 from a virus, a little too real and recent, probably for us all.
Yeah.
And then when Floyd was on the ship first heading to the moon or Clavius, he was talking about how he could see the news scroll, and he was like getting this fear of like, wow, when this gets back to Earth, like people can just be terminally online reading news all the time. And I'm like, it's kind of where we're at.
Yeah.
So it's just some interesting predictions that I kind of noted as I was going through.
Yeah. Nick, were there any predictions that you thought were like, oh, that's kind of crazy?
The one that jumped out at me was, we talked about it earlier, FaceTime.
Yeah.
It's literally FaceTiming people.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know if we've done FaceTimes from space yet, but that would be cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
that was, sorry, go ahead.
Well, one I would like to point out is the scene where they're watching their interview from the spaceship and they're eating, and they're both, just the way that it's shot, that they're both silently watching themselves and eating and not talking to each other. I'm like, that's fucking crazy. I'm sorry, I don't know if we're allowed to curse on here yet.
No, we're totally fine.
Okay, cool. That is like that, to see that was from the 60s, and like that's just such a, I'm sure we all can relate to that feeling of like, you're like, we're living in an age where you can see footage of yourself like while you're, it's just like it. Yeah. It's very cool.
Yeah. And when Haywood had the conversation with his daughter, that was actually Stanley Kubrick's daughter, was the girl in the FaceTime video.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. But yeah, it is funny. I mean, again, we talked about how people watching this in 1968, probably seeing a video call was just like, whoa.
Yeah.
Like that's never going to happen. But yeah, it is funny seeing that. Yeah, literally what we're doing now. We talk about what is the most important thing a kind of movie needs to get right for the adaptation to be successful. And this is a weird one because they were kind of done at the same time. But as you think about making this a movie, like and I would say it was relatively successful based on the legacy it has. What do you think Stanley had to do to make this so compelling and so much of a game changer that it became?
Oh man, I feel like we have to talk about how much of a feat it was just visually, and I feel like that really is where the movie is just kind of like, I think it is a major cause for its legacy, is just the fact that they like put so much effort, like, we're going to make this movie beautiful.
Yeah.
And it's going to take its sweet time.
Yeah.
And it's just going to be, and like, you know what I mean? Like, and there's something to be said about that. And I know you said it's a weird situation as far as other adaptations, because it's like, it's a bit of a weird situation, but that's a great question. And I'm really not sure what exactly Kubrick had to get right for this to have been so successful. But I think the visual component was absolutely done. And that's aside from my take of like, there could have been more context, just if the movie wasn't nearly as pretty, because we mentioned going into this, like with the feeling of like, oh, I don't know if this is for me. Like I kind of have like this preconceived notion of this. I will say, as soon as we were watching the movie, I was like, oh no, I'm just captured by it.
Yeah. Cause it could be if the visual palette of the movie doesn't work, it could be so corny, like how it looks. And you mentioned earlier you're a Star Wars kid, I am too. And I kind of always think of movies that are set in space are all building on what Star Wars did visually. Mm-hmm. And then I watched this and I was like, oh, Star Wars was so inspired by this movie and how it looked and how it felt, that if that doesn't work and that space doesn't feel realistic and so pristine and beautiful like it does, I don't think the movie works at all. Because, like you've both said, that there is a bit of an absence of plot in the movie version, or at least conclusive answers, that it's not really about the actual underlying story as much as it is about here's what we can do on this screen. Nick, would you say that this is the book wise, if you watch this movie, is this a must experience it if you like the movie, or would you say skip the book?
I think you should read the book whether you've seen the movie or not, to be honest with you. I think it's a really great piece of classic sci-fi literature. And it's not super long. Or dense. I mean, it's
230 pages, I think.
Yeah, the copy Aidan gave me is 225 pages. So read it on vacation, read it at home, whatever. I don't know. It's a quick, easy read. It's really interesting. And to your point, it set the groundwork for all the classic stuff that we know now. Like through Star Wars. And I think it's worth it, to be honest. A must, if you will.
Yeah, I agree. All right, I'm going to hit the movie background, and then we'll just roll right into getting into the movie as much as we want.
Cool.
All right. Hal, stop coughing, please. Background on the adaptation. So, 1964, Kubrick had just finished Dr. Strangelove and told Columbia Pictures that his next film, he already knew he wanted it to be about extraterrestrial life. Every time I see extraterrestrial, I can't not think of E.T. It's like it has taken over that word. He obtained financing from MGM, selling that this could be marketed in their new ultra widescreen format. So he was planning to make something that was like big and beautiful already for the screen. He was also super inspired by right in the 50s. I don't know Forbidden Planet, but he was inspired by that. And then the Godzilla just came out from Japan, and he's like, wow, like I need to get on this type of filmmaking. And we'll save a lot of this for aesthetics and world building, but his desire was to create a more sleek and realistic depiction of space travel. As at that time, a lot of the space and sci-fi was going on. It was like there's a big bug that is taking over planet Earth, or it was like that type of like almost like kind of like, for lack of a better term, trashy sci-fi of the time. So he's like, I want to do something that feels a little bit more realistic and actually projecting of what the future could be like. And in 1964, they were having the World's Fair at that time, which I always like wonder, what are they doing at the World's Fair? I always hear about this place.
Yeah.
And there was a movie there called To the Moon and Beyond that was so influential to him on kind of that design that he hired the company behind it to do all the camera work for 2001. So they agreed. He met Arthur C. Clarke, we already talked about. They started writing the movie. And originally, the film was going to be titled How the Solar System Was Won, as a play on How the West Was Won, which just came out from MGM. And they were like, that's probably not a good idea. And so he was also considering Universe, Planetfall, which I think is a pretty cool name, and Journey Beyond the Stars was actually released as the title in the press at one point. He consulted a lot Carl Sagan, the astronomer. I'm trying to remember the name of the famous series Carl Sagan did, but he's probably the most famous astronomer of all time. He was consulted on how are they going to depict extraterrestrial life, as Kubrick really wanted to have aliens in the movie. And Sagan argued to him that alien life forms were unlikely to bear any resemblance to humans, and that to do it would introduce, in his opinion, an element of falseness to the movie. And he proposed that the film should just suggest a super intelligent life is out there rather than depict it. And he was happy when he went to the premiere that Kubrick listened to him and didn't show any actual aliens. We'll discuss, I'm sure, the legacy in depth when we get there. But this was not an immediate hit. It was profitable at the time. But it has since become the highest grossing film of 1968, as it just kind of stayed in the box office and kept re-releasing over the 70s. Critical reception was polarizing. We have that right on this podcast here. I'd still say today when people watch it, it has that same effect. And It is also, though, considered one of the most important films ever made, not from the story perspective, but what they did with the movie. And almost any list you pull that is, most important movies of all time, AFI's top films, this is going to be somewhere in there for just what it brought to movies. And we were even talking, a little bit offline here about just the amount that this has been parodied has been insane, that it almost loses its luster.
Yeah.
Critical, we talked about the critical reception. People were walking out of it, at the premieres, and someone said to Arthur C. Clarke when he walked out of the premiere, he said, "Will someone tell me what the hell this is about?" And Clarke said, "If you understand 2001 completely, we have failed. We wanted to raise far more questions than we answered." And Clarke did later express some concern that the film was too hard to follow, as we mentioned. And
I was about to say, I was like, that doesn't sound like Clarke.
And that's why the novelization happened. So I need to know, Aidan, high-level thoughts. How do you feel about 2001: A Space Odyssey, the movie?
I feel great about 2001: Space Odyssey, the movie. I love the movie. I know we've already like doubled down on kind of the hesitations going into it. Yeah. But every time I watch this movie, I've just like really enjoyed it. It's just the eye candy is still very much so alive. Like 50 years later. And like it's great. It's a great movie, especially with the amount of times I've seen it now at this point, to just throw it on. Like if I'm working on music with somebody, we'll have it just on in the background. If I'm at a party and I'm ready for people to kind of, head out, I throw it on. But it's like such a visually just like captivating movie that I feel like it also just is so crazy that it came out in 1968. Like every time I watch it, I'm like, what? And it's like, even in the ways that it's dated, it's still so tasteful, in my opinion, at least for someone with my taste. It's still just like so, I very much so like it a lot. But as far as high level thoughts, I don't know if I really have too much to take away from it, because the movie is very nebulous.
Yeah.
No pun intended. It is very nebulous.
Yeah, I agree. I find I haven't rewatched it yet because I just watched it for the first time last week, but I can see that the rewatchability of this, if you like it, is extremely kind of valuable to kind of go through and pick up pieces that you didn't see before with a great understanding now. And I'm sure you're feeling the same way, that you kind of can't wait to throw this on again. And
something like that. No, it's crazy. It's like I was like, oh, Aidan just made a really good point. I'm going to build on that. And then you asked me that question, and now I'm just like viscerally angry.
Yeah. Well, let's we could stay in the positive. Wait. Yeah, go for it.
I do have something positive. I do. I really do. When Aidan mentioned that it ages well and it's still a tasteful movie, I think that's actually a great point, because while the movies made in the 60s, 70s, when they try to predict future tech, obviously it changes, and some of that doesn't age super well, but that doesn't make a movie inherently any worse if that's what happens. But the themes of the movie, the interactions of the people of the movie, those aged very well. Nothing's like problematic from that standpoint, except for perhaps a lack of representation. Just a bunch of white guys throughout the whole movie. But
par for the course.
Yeah.
So, the other movie we did about the 60s was a Rat Pack movie that had all sorts of problems in it. Yeah. So
this one wasn't blatant.
There's just no blatant racism every 10 minutes. Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought that was a good point.
Yeah. And
sorry, Randy, go ahead.
No, you're good.
I'm going to keep cutting you off, apparently. Sorry. I'm so sorry.
Yeah. Finish your thoughts.
Nope, go ahead. It's all you. All you.
No, I said this at our break as well, that I appreciate for the podcast format that you can come on here and tell me that Argyle's not a bad movie and that Stanley Kubrick is a hack, because at least you're honest to yourself, even if you're wrong.
I have never said that Stanley Kubrick is a hack, and I don't think Argyle is a good movie. I said it was a bad movie.
Yeah, I'm just creating false propaganda here. No, but how that relates is I wrote this in our doc that I admit I am the type of person that I can get swept up in the hype of something where I'm like, this is supposed to be great. So I go into it really wanting to enjoy it.
Yeah.
And that can backfire two ways where like you trick yourself into really liking it because you feel you should, but it can also just blow up in its face like it did for Nick of like, this just did not work for me. But I gotta say, I sincerely love this. And I probably had the typical reaction, we've talked about in the first 30 minutes, but I thought the middle part, which is a good portion of this, was incredible. Everything from starting the space travel up through kind of the tripping balls sequence of the Stargate was just incredible to me. And I don't think I truly understood what happened at the end when the movie wrapped up. But I'm also the type of person where like I kind of like I like that the movie can end and I can turn to whoever I watched it with and we can have like an earnest conversation about like what we thought happened. And if you don't come to any good answers, maybe that was a little bit of a failure. But if it at least generates that conversation, I'm the type of person like I really enjoy that. So even if I didn't understand what happened, I had fun with that aspect of it.
I agree. I will say, and I meant to tack this onto the end of my just comment there, but I know we were keeping it mostly positive. I will say, as much as I love the movie, since I first saw it and every time I rewatched it, I find the ending a bit of a letdown.
Yeah,
for lack of a better way to put it. And I know there's context with them running out of money and the budget.
Yeah,
zapping away, but especially compared to what the detail that's in the novel. Is just it is a little bit like, and especially with the baby sequence, I'm like, it just leaves me kind of like with like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
like what the, which there's something to be said about that as well. But
yeah, what I did kind of like piece together was the end is it was almost giving me the feeling, and I'm wondering if this is intentional. I think it's intentional from finishing the book this morning.
Oh wow,
that we can understand the beginning. We can understand what's happening with the apes and their evolution. I don't know why I keep saying evolution. 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 Maybe it was an evolution. We can understand space travel that we're seeing depicted in the middle of the movie. But the next evolution that we see to like an out-of-body super baby experience, like that's hard for us to comprehend, almost as hard as it was for those apes to comprehend using a bone as a tool. It's like we're at a point as humans where like we can't understand what that is yet, so we're just as dumb as the apes are. And like I think that was the intention. And does it make it any more satisfying? Maybe not, because like we just don't understand. But I'm almost like, what is a satisfying conclusion to this story if we don't know what is next? So that's the only thing I kind of feel a little bit with the ending.
That's profound.
No,
genuinely, that's not sarcasm at all. That was really profound. I don't have anything to add to that.
Cool. Well, we solved it. Let's wrap it up.
Thanks for having me, guys.
That was awesome.
Yeah, but I'd agree. There's some nitpicks, which I think we can dissect in the plot area. But we'll start with casting and performances. Nitpick. There might be. What is the bigger version of a nitpick?
Glaring issues.
Some bones to pick with this.
Yeah, me and Moonwatch are picking bones. Like,
yeah, literally. Do you want to talk casting?
Yeah, okay. I have a bunch of things I gotta ask both of you here. So first of all, we're not going to not talk about the fact that they had a real leopard jump on a real human being for this movie.
We talked about this off the initial call.
Like probably like 20 minutes.
What's going on? Yeah, that was like, so the leopard though. Like,
the people need to know this was a real leopard that they put the leopard's trainer in one of the monkey costumes and then just had the leopard jump on him. SAG didn't stop it. The Writers Guild, Actors Guild, all like nobody stopped it. I don't understand how you were letting leopards jump on people and then drawing the other monkeys in the background. That's how they got it on. They literally hand drew them in the background. That's why, like, someone give me a take there. Is this okay? Is it not okay? Should we keep having leopards jump on people in modern movies? Like, where do you stand on the leopards?
Randy, do you want to take this one first?
I feel like you need to take this one.
I think clearly, I don't know if this would be a movie that would be made in that same way today. It's not because I don't know what it was like for that trainer. Did the trainer pull up to set to drop the leopard off, and then the Kubrick pressured Buddy to then get into a monkey suit and do this? I don't know. I don't know the ethics behind it because I knew Kubrick. Y'all have talked about this before. Kubrick goes astray from ethics as far as the director. So I also, it's just like for the leopard's sake, it's like, do we really need a live leopard to be attacking someone? And then like they're like kind of tussling on this shot. Like, I don't think we need to be putting like animals in that situation for the shot. But
no, and I feel so dumb that I didn't realize it when I was watching it, or even question what was going on. Because if there's anything visually that looked aged, it was the ape suits, in my opinion.
Yeah, totally.
But I didn't even contrast that with. I was like, wow, this leopard looks really good. So it makes a lot of sense.
All the budget went to the leopard costume.
All the budget went to the leopard.
It was actually two guys in the sitting on top of each other like a horse.
Like old timey.
Yeah.
That's amazing. But anything else you got on the leopard, or you want to get into other casting?
No, I just needed to make sure we talked about that. But
great.
I have a question on
wait, did the leopard have a name before we move on? Do you know?
I'll find it.
Stage name?
We'll put it leopard number 1.
Yeah.
The official stage name.
Yeah. It's going to be something.
Number 1.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know what the leopard's name was, but that's how it's billed, is leopard number 1.
Yeah. Maybe Larry. Go ahead.
But no, so from a casting perspective, we have Hal, right? Who is this robot?
What a sinister voice.
Do you read me, Hal? Affirmative, Dave. I read you.
It was perfect.
Loved it.
It was perfect.
Douglas Rain is the actor who voiced Hal 9000. But on that, you had Keir Dullea and Gary Lockwood, who play Bowman and Poole. They didn't always get to act opposite each other. They had to interact with this computer.
Yeah,
half the
so
time.
Good.
How do you evaluate a performance where an actor has to act against nothing? It's just them delivering lines and having to, silently wait for cues to move on. Do you think that A, do you think it worked here? And then B, do you have more leniency in somebody's performance when you're evaluating whether you liked it or not, knowing that they had those additional difficulties?
Randy, you want to take this one first?
I can, and if you want more time to think, but I'm also happy to let you run it.
I'm ready. I felt
go for it. No, go for it.
I'm gonna be honest with you. First of all, I would like to say I do think it worked because this is the first time I've even thought about that.
It did.
I was like, I never.
Yeah.
I did not find it spotty at all.
Mm-mm.
And there's a lot to be said about like actors that are in situations where they have to like, they're really just there's like that certain level of like, oh, they are performing right now, on their own, and I thought it worked super well. There was no parts of it, at least maybe if I could rewatch it with that context, there were no parts that I've found spotty. So I think it works very well.
Yeah, I agree. It's almost a complete contrast to when you watch a newer movie where someone is on a kind of a sound stage and maybe acting with a prop in front of them. It feels awkward and fake.
Mm-hmm.
But the unsettled sort of ness that Bowman and Poole had when talking to Hal, it almost just made it better because they're in this story, imagining this is real life, they are feeling discomfort. And you get this through the book of having to converse with just this screen or this dot. So it almost works really well for the movie's sake that like it doesn't feel completely natural, but it is unnatural in a way that enhances the feeling of like dread and discomfort so much.
Randy,
do you feel
that was another amazing take? Oh my god! I'm like, yeah, it was cool. It was whatever.
Randy, do you feel that the unnatural was because they were acting with on a soundstage with nothing, or do you think that unnatural was the performance and it was just they nailed it as actors?
I feel like it's the performance. I
agree.
I don't know, but there were the absolute sense of dread that they both could convey on their faces, or just something the movie did so well in these scenes is you don't know what they're thinking because we're not in their head like in the book, but you know exactly what they're thinking because you're thinking the same exact thing. Like, Hal is something is going on, something is wrong, but we can't talk about it. And now I'm feeling stressed about that. And I need to find out how to talk to Poole. And I think they both just did such an excellent job of conveying that, but not trying to tip off Hal. But by not trying to tip off Hal, being blatantly obvious to Hal that they're questioning him. So I thought they killed it. I don't know. But did you feel the same?
I thought another scene that highlights that really well is when Hal locks him out of the ship, like after he goes to collect the body, and he's talking to Hal, but you can see him thinking, like figuring out what's going on and talking to Hal and exploring his options, and then the like panic that goes on his face. Yeah. Nonverbal, but physical panic as he's going towards that escape hatch and has to like try to get back in the ship that way. I thought that was a great example of like him doing a physical acting job against nothing and it working well.
Yeah. I didn't really think about it until you were asking these questions of how tough this must have been to film.
Yeah.
For all the actors involved. You're just having to do so much with so little. But I guess it helps that the sets were so immaculately done that everything looked real, that it probably did help a lot.
Yeah, that's fair. Okay, so then do you think that would be easier than trying to do that today where you're literally sitting in a green room?
Yeah. It has to be way easier.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
How did you guys feel about Floyd? What's his first name? Is it Hayward?
Haywood.
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 Yeah. Did you? I'm in a kind of camp where I want a Floyd short story to just know a little bit more of like what's going on in all of these like international relations. Did you enjoy the casting of Floyd? I'll go Aidan first.
I did, yeah. I think for me, he was just like the quintessential like transatlantic mid-century sci-fi guy. You know what I mean? Like, oh, well, hello, we're on the space station. Yeah, that was like, yeah. Then I thought it worked well.
It was like Mad Men-esque almost, like his sort of persona a little bit, like classic 60s suit type of person. As I'm thinking about this is a pretty slim cast. Like,
yeah.
There's only 4 or 5 people you spend any real time with.
Yeah.
One of them doesn't even get a name in the movie.
Who might that be?
Moonwatcher.
Do we even spend time with Moonwatcher though? Like, let's be real. Is there?
Yeah.
Do you? On my first watch of this, I did not gather that we were following one monkey. I'm going to be honest with you.
Yeah.
I was
fair.
like, there are
honestly fair.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm trying to think of any other interesting tidbits on the casting side and the performances. I did find as well the end. There's so much that Bowman had to do. I know we already talked about Bowman, but just in those end sequences of just like him walking back and forth and the aging, that was, it just felt harrowing. It did. You mentioned Interstellar earlier, Aidan. Yeah. It reminded me of that planet they land on in Interstellar where time goes like 21 years for every minute or whatever that was. Where it's just like the sense of dread that's almost happening of like, what is going on with time here? I thought they did really well in that scene too. But yeah, I mean, that's about it for the cast. I mean, we have about an hour of just monkeys in space, so it's pretty thin. Do you want to hit a best casting, Nick?
Yeah, absolutely. Who's giving out the watchy today? Should we let Aidan give out one of them?
Yeah,
or is it you?
I'd like to hear their pick. Yeah,
my pick on who's the best casted.
Yeah. So I'm going to read you some nominees, Aidan, just like the Oscars, and you are going to hand out the watchy. And then that's what we call it until we have a better name.
The Moonwatchy?
The Moonwatchy.
Oh my God.
All right. So our nominees for Best Casting in 2001 A Space Odyssey are Keir Dullea as David Bowman, Gary Lockwood as Dr. Frank Poole, William Sylvester as Haywood Floyd, Daniel Richter as Moonwatcher, or Douglas Rain as HAL 9000.
Douglas Rain as HAL 9000, I think, is the best performance.
Yeah. Douglas is now our oldest winner of a Watchie.
And our first non-human.
Never seen on screen. It's just the voice.
Yeah.
That's impressive. I'm curious to know from like the performance aspect, how much of Douglas's voice was digitally altered and how much was he kind of like modulating it himself at the end? I'm very curious to know.
I've thought about that a lot, actually. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have any, what does your hunch say, Aidan, just because you're much more steeped in kind of the musical sound world than us?
I feel like they had to, I've thought about like, did they just have him speaking normally and then they slowed the tape down? That's what my initial response is. But I wonder what the cues, like, I'm very curious of like what his direction was given. That it was like, okay, you want to sound more tired here, like, or if he just kept it very, but it does sound like they actually like physically did it.
Okay.
Yeah.
At
least to my ear.
It's great. It was good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
He was, Douglas was great. One actual that is not a big cast member of this, I just want to throw out before we move on, was I loved the birthday message that Poole got. Because you get the context in the book too of it. One, it is so like classic hokey. I'm like, every old man talked like this in the 1960s, at least in movies. But even with that small scene, they did such a great job of conveying they're feeling like a bit uncomfortable recording themselves doing this video. And there's like a sense of awkwardness between them. And also a little bit of, they're just scared, you can feel for their son, but they're trying to be positive. And I thought both of them, just in that 30 seconds that they had, it was a really good scene.
I agree. It was very funny. Sorry you can't join us for your cake. Yeah.
Well, and then he's just like, I don't know what else to say. So it's just like every grandpa ever.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Should we move on to plot?
What plot?
The shortest section of this podcast.
Yeah.
Oh, wait. We didn't give a score to casting and performances.
Oh, you're right. We didn't.
I'll start. Aidan, 0 to 5. How would you rate the casting and performances in this movie?
Dara, is it okay if I say a 5 out of 5? Like, is that?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's plenty okay.
For Douglas. Yeah.
there was nothing that had me think like, oh, this should have been casted differently.
Yeah.
At the time, with the context of the movie, you know.
Nick, where are you at?
I gave it a 4.
Yeah. I gave it a 4 as well, mainly for the reason of, I don't know. There was no misstep for me in terms of performances. And maybe this is slipping a little bit too much into the plot area. I just wish we had a little bit more with the, I don't even know what to call them. The people running the space station prior to the Jupiter mission. I just wish we had a little bit more time with like what was going on with Floyd, and I can't even remember the other person's name he was kind of delegating with on what was going on Clavius. But I just wanted a little bit more of that, or even the stewardess who was like, hey, my husband is stationed there and I haven't heard from them in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Do you know what's like? A few of those moments I missed a little bit.
Which just, I agree that it kind of, it felt very like, especially with the pace of the movie, that it was just like, all right, you're getting like so much context, like just said to you in like 3 sentences, just very, the pacing there was definitely very, very jumpy.
Plot, execution, faithfulness to the source material.
Nick, do you want to get started on this one?
Yeah, do you want to?
Take it away.
I have some problems with this movie. And one of them, and I don't know if this is better here or in the sound section, but Kubrick did a lot where he would use like there's nothing in the sound. All you hear is the breathing of the astronaut, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he's trying to convey the loneliness of space. And that is a really cool aspect of this and a really fun way to show that and like interesting the first time and for like a minute. But by the time I'm on my fourth 10-minute sequence of just I'm like, Jesus Christ, dude. Like, we get it. Like, you've done it so much now to where it's like a caricature of this moment and it's not cool anymore. And I'm sick of it. And you need to make this movie 35 minutes shorter. Or again, with the spacewalking, when they're all going down to the monolith, they're like bouncing around. There's so much time in this movie that you just spend watching people go from point A to point B. Jesus Christ, can we please move the fuck on? Again, really cool special effects, but like I don't need 35 minutes of each of those sequences. I didn't need to spend 4 years of my life watching a movie with no plot. They were really cool, and I
Nick, tell us how you really feel.
I understand why, like especially visually, it was so groundbreaking. But at a certain point, you're just bragging. You're just being a dick. Like, just move on.
Yeah.
I love that the astronauts walking up to the monolith on the moon, giving you the space to understand fully what happened in the ape scene now, that this is progressing humankind to their next level. Maybe the crux of the entire movie. I love the hot take of like,
yeah, that was,
you know
that
what? We don't need to understand what's going on in the movie. Let's just have them do a drive-by.
Randy, that scene, it's 9 minutes of them walking up. They're not using new tools. The only connection is it's the same kind of sequence that the monkeys had coming up to it. You don't need 9 minutes to do that. You need maybe half that.
I didn't think that sequence particularly was too long. I think a lot of them were too long. There are other sequences than the. I love just thinking about. That's the one that I've been thinking about whenever I watch. Like, oh, I wonder what it was like on set for them to be like, all right, more moonwalking. Nope. Yep. Bill, look more like you're on the moon. Bill, you're looking. Yeah, float more, Bill. Yeah, it's just like
too fast. Slow down.
Yeah.
No, I felt like.
Randy, do you want to dive in first?
Go for it, Aidan.
Nick, I will say I agree that I think the hyper stylization of the at a certain point conveying the slow pace and solitude of space went from being really cool and stylized to being a bit braggy and self-indulgent. I think that like I can see how people receive it.
Yeah.
I understand how the movie attracts a certain type of demographic of film enjoyers, and I see why people don't like it. Personally, I think it's so pretty that I don't even care. Just big sci-fi fan, but I understand the opinions. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
So you're valid.
The only part that grated on me was the length of the end sequence when they're traveling. That was the only time where I was like, the length this is going on is not adding anything to my experience, especially because it's not visually interesting after 2 minutes of it. I understand in the book what they were trying to do with the movie was convey how far Bowman had gone, because in the book it's like 20 chapters of him traveling past where everybody died to get to the Saturn. Like, I understand that they're trying to convey that length of time, but I was like, I didn't actually need to spend that length of time just seeing colors blur across. I did not need that.
Looking at like the Grand Canyon, it's like neon green. It's like
I have one plot question I kind of want to spend some time on, because I think there could be some discrepancies between the book and the movie. I'm just curious because I think it's interesting. What was Hal's plan, and when did he decide, or was it part of his mission, or what changed that he came up with the scheme of the broken down. I forget what it's called, the AE-35 unit or whatever. Like, what was Hal's motivation, and when did that motivation begin or change? So I'll pose that first to Aidan. What was Hal's game plan here?
I thought it was, man, it's been a little too long since I've seen that part of the movie or read that part or heard that part, I should say. That I think there was it's revealed, like there's a message from the president, right? After Hal is deactivated, explaining what was going on with the mission.
Mm-hmm.
And that it was clearly, there was a lot going on that Hal was under the programming of that the crew members did not understand.
Yeah.
And I don't know how clear it is whenever Hal is kind of set up in defense mode, if that makes sense, for that mission.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's to believe that scheme was bullshit, right? Mm-hmm. That Hal posed.
Yeah.
So
that's what I understand.
What point did Hal kind of be like, well, this is what needs to happen?
Yeah. I guess Nick, I saw you nodding. What do you
I definitely agree with parts of that. And so I was writing down my thoughts on that so I didn't listen. I don't feel like Hal had a motivation. Mm-hmm. I think it's a lot more binary than that, because when we're talking about this artificial intelligence, it's like, okay, this mission, this needs to be a success. This above all else, right? So all of the decisions are binary from there. Does this help the mission be successful or hurt the mission? And at some point, the AI determined that the human component of this mission would interfere with its success. And that's why Hal made the decisions that it did. But I don't think it was motivating, screw these guys. They want to turn me off. Well, screw you. You're going to go out in space. No, it's okay. The human element of this mission is a detriment to its success. I need to remove the human element of this mission. And that with AI, especially now, that is a super relevant conversation that we need to have. And the ethics of AI and the success of, what this is versus human life. Super, I think that aged super well.
Yeah, absolutely.
I loved that aspect. This middle part, I love that. But I don't think it was a motivation. I think it was just a series of binary decisions that were designed to make you and I discuss the ethics of AI.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that because they mentioned, and for those of you who haven't seen this in a while, Hal says that one of these outside units has failed and they need to go fix it. And they're discovering that it didn't really fail and that something is going on where Hal's kind of going, in their mind, off script. Mm-hmm. And they message back to mission control, and Poole and Bowman are like, something's up with Hal. We tested the machine. There's nothing wrong. And mission control is like, that's odd. We also had our other super Hal computer say that Hal is doing something different than we are anticipating. Do you think the other HAL 9000 understands what this HAL was doing? I'm wondering if, what the relationship was between what Mission Control knows about what is going on with the mission versus this other HAL 9000 they're working with, and then the one on the ship. I'm like, who is in cahoots with who here?
I did really like that aspect of it, yeah.
And I just have no idea.
Mm-hmm.
If I had to guess, it would be the other HAL 9000 is going to list in orderhood of probability what is happening. And I would imagine somewhere on that list, one of the outcomes could be HAL 9000 on board is malfunctioning.
Yeah. Yeah, it was just good. It's just good stuff. Just very interesting. I did appreciate in the book, and I referenced this earlier, so I can kind of flesh this thought out of, there's a mash together of what happened in the book and the movie that I would have really liked. And I mentioned a few of the things I really liked in the movie, which were the more directness of Poole and Bowman having secret conversations about Hal that wasn't in the book. But what I really liked in the book that was fleshed out more was the mission was that the three who were hibernated were actually given the full mission brief of what this was going to be. And they were hibernated so that they didn't have to do the news interviews and they didn't have to question the morality of the mission or the success of the mission, where the two, Bowman and Poole, were not given the full details and were just kind of keeping up appearances with the media and not questioning everything going on around them because they don't know really what they're doing. I thought if they would have incorporated that a little bit into the movie, that with Poole and Bowman really questioning what is going on, exactly what they were fearful of in the book, I thought that would have been so excellent.
Mm-hmm.
And I say that as someone who still thinks the middle portion was like lights out 5 out of 5. But that was some good stuff that was kind of in the book.
That's a great point. That's a very great point.
I have a question on kind of plot mechanics. When did you realize that this was about evolution? Like, did it dawn on you, for pun intended? Like, when did you get to the point in the movie where you were reflecting back on the opening sequence and understanding like kind of what was being shown there? Was it not until you read the book? Was it through the movie? Because it's such an obviously unique choice to begin the movie with 30 minutes of apes. And when did it dawn on you, and has it that, like, what was the purpose of that? I'll start with Nick because I went Aidan last time.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because you experience that very differently in the book than in the movie. In the book with Moonwatcher, I think you understand that very early and what the monoliths are doing and how they're influencing everything. I don't think it's until about an hour into the movie that you start to realize it, because I mean, you spend the 35 minutes with the monkeys, right? And you have another 5-7 minutes of that super long intro where there's just nothing on the screen. So no, that's not. I didn't even mean that. Like, it is a criticism, but like I didn't even. But that's why it's like an hour into the movie. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you see them, and they're and they have all their stuff, but it's not until they go to the monolith and you see them, and you're like, oh, you're making the connection between the spacewalking and the monkeys approaching it, and then there's that noise that is happening, and like you're like, oh, okay, I see like what we're doing here, but. I think it's probably, or at least for me in the movie, I had no idea where that was going before that moment.
Yeah. Aidan, you said you read the book quite a bit after seeing the movie for the first time.
Yeah.
Just like your initial movie going experience, like what do you remember what your interpretations were of like what was going on in the first 30 minutes?
Well, for me, to be honest, a large amount of what I was feeling the first time I saw this was like, what the fuck? And just kind of like, this is a bit pretentious. Like, come on now.
Yeah.
But not that I didn't enjoy it, but I was also like, I thought it was a little funny. I will say the theme of like evolution though and development, I feel like I honestly picked that up from the shot, like the classic shot that's with the bone flying into the air and then it turns into this, the spaceship.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, okay. So, okay, I gathered like, okay, that's where we started and now people are here,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Well, you caught on quicker than me. I realized somewhat what was going on during Nick's favorite scene of the 9 minutes of spacewalking down to the obelisk on the moon. That's when I realized when I saw all them crowded around it, and I was like, oh, we're still monkeys. Like, we're still examining this thing and we don't know what it means. And we're just trying to push ourselves forward, or we're not even trying, we're being forced. And I think that's what I didn't realize until I read the book, was that this slab was being kind of more of the match strike to evolution, as opposed to, I don't even know what I thought it was in the movie. I just thought it was like something to change their routine and their day-to-day life, to have them think of something maybe different, because as you're reading the book, you see they do the same thing every day. It's all for survival.
Yeah.
So
I think that's an interesting point, because I feel that in the movie it's portrayed as like this monolith, and like needing to explore what this monolith is the driving factor, right?
Yeah.
Not that the monolith is the one giving you the tools to make the changes. So like to that point, I think you're exactly right. I didn't pick that up at all in the movie. Well, I guess in the second half I did, because I had read the book, but yeah, before reading the book, I wouldn't have come to that conclusion.
I had with the first. That's a great point. I had with the first half that I was like, oh, that the monkeys saw the monolith, and then the next development was what they started using tools, and that was like that's like the advantage. Like I genuinely like that was something I was thinking about. That I was not thinking about the monolith being the driver in the second half.
Yeah,
for me it was like kind of like they're rediscovering this thing that's always been here.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think that's it gets to the point where, like I was saying earlier, it's like it's hard for you to contextualize like what more could be, like what more could be out there. Mm-hmm. So you see that first monolith and you're like, okay, that's feasible. Okay, going to the moon, that's feasible. And then the third one, I'm like, I have no idea what's happening anymore. I can't even comprehend this. So yeah, it wasn't until that first part on Clavius, and I think in terms of the pacing, I would say that the pacing from kind of that point of they see the one on the moon up through, I would say, Bowman starting his journey alone out after everyone else dies, I think is paced so well in that middle with the plot. And I had this question for you both. Did you watch this? How did you watch this? Did you watch it on streaming or a physical version?
Yeah, I watched it on, I think, HBO Max. Yeah.
Did they have the intermission break in the middle on that? Okay. One, I don't think I've ever seen that in a movie before, which is cool. But I think that part where you're slowly uncovering the plot from the beginning, and then Hal is starting to go off the rails, and they have that conversation in the plot, and then it cuts, in the pod, and then it cuts to the intermission. That to me was just like, holy shit! Like, what is going on now? It ramped up to a level that I really didn't expect. And I thought it was so effective that I was just imagining watching this in 1968 and like leaving during the intermission to go get more popcorn. And everybody's like, this took a way darker turn than I was expecting.
Yeah.
Because it really does turn into kind of a horror movie in the middle. And I know you're a horror fan, but like, were you feeling those vibes, especially coming out of the intermission with Poole dying, killing of all the people in hibernation? Like, what was going through your mind watching that section of the movie?
I think the middle part of this movie was fantastic, and I think that Kubrick did a really good job making you feel scared there. And you're like,
I was scared.
When that intermission thing pops up, you're just sitting there like what next? What's next? Like, where do we go? How do we go from here? Not even where, how? And I thought that was done really well. And I thought that was a wild spot to just throw intermission, like very intentional, as you said, but that was a great use of like a break, or like being a director and understanding how you want the audience to feel in a certain moment, and then giving them time to process. Because I think to your point, if you don't process what's happening there, I don't think you feel the same dread for Bowman that you do if you just continue the movie. You just jump to the next scene.
Yeah, it was a very, very, very effective use of that.
But I actually have a question. I have two questions that I just wrote down, and I'm going to ask one to Aidan and one to you, Randy. Randy, do you think that the second monolith being on the moon, had anything to do with like current affairs of the time? You know, we're right in the middle of the space race. We're all trying to go to the moon. That's the mission. Do you think that's why it's so focused around moon bases and where the monolith was placed, rather than on another planet or just somewhere out in the solar system?
You definitely feel the times and what current affairs were happening, and the moon was everything at that point, which I'm assuming is why it was chosen. Because you get kind of all I mentioned the fears and anxieties of the time before, but a few that we haven't touched on were, people were really concerned with the overpopulation of the Earth at some point and famine. People were starting to really consider what these machines and supercomputers, how humans were going to interact with that. And the first step, which no one had successfully done yet, was, can we land on the moon? And there was even astronomers who thought the moon was pure kind of dust, and that when they landed, they were just going to sink into it. So it felt like this was not only the next step in the movie to propel humans, kind of into further understanding of ourselves and the galaxy, but it was the next step in the current times of, I think there was the anxiety of, okay, we get there, like, then what? Like, are we going to discover something new that is going to change our life? Or is there going to be something more that we need to keep exploring to figure out? So I think it was definitely influenced by what was happening. I mean, it couldn't have been timed better with, I think the moon landing was the next year?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's
literally like, maybe not even a full year later.
Talk about like the best marketing you could ever hope for. Yeah, I don't know. I'd be interested to hear, Aidan, their thoughts on that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like Randy said, you can definitely feel like the time. It is like a period piece in a way. Yeah, definitely. I would say that the space race zeitgeist is just definitely just like riddled through the movie.
Yeah, pervasive.
So, follow-up question.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously these monoliths could have showed up to interact with the human species evolution at any point, but they specifically chose 2 times to do that. Both Clarke and Kubrick. And that was one, the dawn of our common ancestors starting to use tools, which changed everything, right?
Mm-hmm.
They talk about it a lot in the book, that how your face changes, your teeth change, how that freed up your brain to do other things. And then they picked when the world had started colonizing the moon as that next stage. Why was that second point the inflection point to when we would, when an intelligence being or species or whatever the monolith is, why did they choose that moment? Or why do you think they would choose that moment to put another monolith somewhere for us to find and help propel us into the next stage?
Well, I think because that was a great, going back, building off of the zeitgeist of the space race was like, oh, this is the next frontier. The final frontier is like to propel us, off of this world. And that was like the monolith being on the moon would be the first landmark to see like the species exploring that. And I guess that it's interesting that was like, that's the next landmark that we should check in on. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's totally fair. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. It's like, this is the next test for humankind. And it probably also the most accessible. Like, can they prove that they can do space travel and successfully land on probably the easiest, most accessible planet for us to land on?
Yeah.
If we can do that. Okay, we can take them a little bit further now.
Mm-hmm.
It's totally fair.
Yeah.
I have a question for y'all,
please.
if that's okay.
Yeah.
Let's jump ahead. Let's jump ahead to the location after the Stargate shenanigans.
Yeah.
Did y'all enjoy? And this is going to be a little more comparison between the book and the movie. Did y'all enjoy the visual aspect of that, of receiving that visually, or did you enjoy the book version of that and reading about that? Which one did y'all prefer between that?
I preferred the book, but I will say this. Visually, I think the way they designed the hotel room from hell in the movie added to the fears and the dreads and the uncertainties that you're feeling. Like, it was that hotel room would not be fun to stay in. It would give me so much anxiety. And I think putting him into a room that made me feel that way helped me feel his anxieties of, he has no idea what's like, especially when you're watching this movie, he has no idea. He like takes a second to figure out where he is, to slowly get out, thinks he sees something, wasn't quite sure. Like,
yeah,
I think visually the way Kubrick chose to portray that room added to the negative feelings that I think we are supposed to feel about like anxiety and fear and what's happening to him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm not sure which I prefer, especially just hearing your thoughts on it, Nick, as I think we've said a lot about like what they were intending with the movie. And I was so exhausted by the time we got to the hotel room in the movie after that space travel sequence, which is there, for better or worse, Kubrick is trying to give you what Bowman is feeling. The absolute exhaustion of like, I finally got to somewhere new. And it looks just like a hotel room on Earth. Like, you got to be kidding me. And you're just tired with him. You would just want to go to bed too in that comfy looking bed. And I also like in the movie that I'm watching him because he lands in this hotel room and then he walks into the bathroom. You know, Kubrick always has to have a bathroom scene. And then you see him seeing someone back in the room he was just in, and it's an older version of him. And then he turns around again, and there's another older version of him in the bed. And I'm going through the same thoughts. At first, I was like, what is happening? Like, is time meaningless now? Is this showing him just being here over the years? And I realized, like, no, this is exactly what Bowman is feeling, as he's lost sense of himself and of time. And he doesn't know how fast or slow things are progressing. And he doesn't really know what he's doing here and waiting for. So it was effective for me, I would say, in the movie. But I think it was enhanced a little bit by the book of understanding that this was more of it was designed for him to feel comfortable, which was really interesting.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's kind of how I feel about it. You agree with that, Aidan?
Yeah, no, I both of y'all shared great points on that. Yeah, I loved the how it's designed for him, and I love how Arthur C. Clarke made note of how that it seemed a bit dated and a bit off. He was like, "Why are all these books or the magazines like from behind a certain year, or all the food was just slightly like it was packaged like the food that he knew, but it wasn't actually the food he knew." I thought that was like super simple that we didn't receive in the movie, but the movie I thought was very effective and kind of like the whoa.
Yeah, like pops the beer open and it's the same blue goo that was whatever else he had just eaten. And he's like, oh, this is gonna suck.
Yeah.
So out of 5, what would you give plot? I'll go Nick first on this one.
2.
Aidan?
I gotta go like a 3.5.
Yep, I had a 3.5 as well. I think what we've said, the middle part lights out, and I understand what was going on at the end. I don't know if it was as effective as the book, which is kind of where it loses some luster for me. I'm going to give you some nominations for best scenes, and we already know what Aidan's favorite scene is. I picked 5. I had Moonwatcher wields the bone for the first time, and
good scene.
Get the classic orchestral music playing. I can't pronounce the Austrian or German words for what it's called. Second one, this is a little bit long for a scene, but I would say the flight to Clavius, where you see Floyd flying there. You kind of get the floating pen grab. The stewardess is walking on the wall, and you're realizing something is wrong, but you don't really know what yet. He has that conversation where Floyd plays those Russians to perfection, where they're like, we've heard an epidemic broke out. And he's like, well, I can't say anything more. And as I'm watching that, I'm like, wow, this guy is totally not being subtle at all. But then he's really trying to push the agenda that there is an epidemic. I was like, oh, great stuff when we got to that. Third scene, Bowman and Poole become suspicious of Hal. Pretty much from that psychiatric evaluation, up through their pod combo and all that stuff. Fourth scene, Bowman attempts to save Poole and tries to re-enter the ship and shut Hal down. And then the fifth one, Bowman transcends time and becomes a space baby. I bet Nick is going to go with the fifth one.
It's really hard not to pick Space Baby when you say it that way.
When you say it transcends time and becomes Space Baby.
Yeah.
Like,
how do you not?
Can't say it. Yeah, right. But I actually think it would be the scene where Poole and Bowman first are figuring out what Hal's thinking and how Hal's behaving. I thought that was a really well done sequence. It might even be a couple of scenes, but that general part was fantastic. And the anxieties that they show and the way they chose to try to sneak around Hal was really good.
Aidan, are you still on the shutdown of Hal? is the best scene in the
I think
movie.
So yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I think that's my favorite scene in the movie.
It's a good one. That's
Yeah.
a really good scene.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, to break the tie, I think I will go with the shutdown of Hal. My initial instinct was Nick your scene, 100%, because that was the moment we were watching the movie and you go, oh, like this is what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
But the shutdown of Hal, the voice of Hal as he's trying to turn off every key and the dread of like, is he going to do it? Like, is he going to get
Killing
this
me.
machine off? Yeah, I was like,
You're killing me.
it made me so uncomfortable.
Yeah.
That it was really effective.
Yeah.
World building and aesthetics. Pretty subpar movie in the aesthetics realm, right?
Yeah.
Just didn't do much here.
Mm-hmm.
Just bad.
Aidan, how'd you feel about the aesthetics of this movie?
Oh, 5 out of 5 for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Same.
Easily.
Yeah,
I feel like give credit where credit is due. Yeah.
Yeah. No, and we've talked about it for the last like 2 hours. Like this movie, but like visually, this movie is stunning. The only thing that doesn't even hold up by today's standards are the monkey costumes.
Mm-hmm.
But back then, I bet you those were the best we've ever seen. So
Probably.
no, I'm being serious. I'm not that was not like a sarcastic comment.
No,
I think
it's just yeah.
And the way like things rotate and they show space, and it's the first time you really see gravity being defied on film.
Yeah.
I mean, aesthetically, it's a fucking knockout movie.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
There's no plot, but it's aesthetically beautiful.
Yeah. There's so many interesting visual sequences in this that make you question for the time how they filmed it. Aidan, is there one that sticks out to you when you were watching this that you're just like, this is amazing. I love this.
It's the one where the flight attendant is carrying the tray and like walks around the corner. That's the one that I'm always like, what?
Yeah. It's so
do y'all know how they did that? Did they turn the camera?
It was a rotating set. So the tunnel stayed the same. But the set was rotating with her so she could keep walking. So this was turning and then she's just still walking straight, but it looks like she's walking up the wall.
Gotcha. So she was just walking in place and the camera is actually turning with the set.
I believe so. Yeah.
Wow.
Wild.
Yeah.
Which was used, I put this in the notes, I don't know if you saw, further in the Bye 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 music video by NSYNC where they're dancing is in like a room in the music video where it's like turning and shifting and it looks like they're going around the walls. Pulled it from Stanley Kubrick.
Huh.
That was a big one for me. The pen grab was the first moment in the movie where I was like, how did they do this? And they double-sided tape was just invented. It was a few months before this movie. So they had a pure glass and they stuck the pen to the glass with tape, which they could now do with double-sided tape. And the stewardess walks up and has to very slowly grab the pen off the glass. And that's how they did it.
No way. That's really cool.
I didn't know that. Yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a good one. The only other two I'll shout out were the spaceship flyover was so Star Wars, where I thought Star Wars like invented that, where the Death Star or not the Death Star.
The Star Destroyer?
The Star Destroyer comes over the top. And but that was done here first. That you see it and you see kind of all the intricacies of the ship, and it just looked, it was like George Lucas saw this movie and probably as a kid and was just blown away. Yeah. And was like, I'm gonna do this too.
Yeah.
Well, he made Star Wars less than a decade later.
Yeah, 77.
9 years later.
Yeah.
Yeah, 9 years later that it came out. I mean, there's no way he didn't directly pull from this.
Yeah.
Yeah, it had to be so influential. I mean, he's on the commentary DVDs. He's prominently featured in this, talking about how he feels about it. The other one I really love was the pure white tunnel with the red spacesuit. I just thought it looked so crisp and clean when they're walking out to the pods for the first time. The only other fun notes I had before I'll wrap this up, they didn't know what Earth looked like yet from space because there'd been no photos of Earth from outer space. So they had to invent what they thought it would look like for this movie. That's pretty crazy.
Wow. Yeah, that is crazy.
I hadn't thought about that till just now.
I hadn't thought
wild.
about that either.
And I still don't really understand how they film some of the stuff where you're looking and you're seeing other parts of the ship with people walking and moving in there.
Yeah.
I have no idea how they film that.
Yeah.
So just it's unbelievable what they did.
Yeah.
And then to Nick, this might make Nick happy. The total footage shot was actually 200 times the final length of this movie, which they cut out. So you were spared with quite a lot.
Damn, can't wait for the director's cut.
Yeah, you should be happy.
You're gonna be waiting a while. He's no longer with us, but
it's time to talk about sound. Aidan, this is your area of expertise.
I love the sound of this movie. Yeah. Like I mentioned when we called earlier, like the use of silence, I'm a big fan of. And I know we made note of that. The length could come off as a bit self-indulgent or braggy, but I thought it was very, very effective in what it was trying to do.
Yeah.
For a while.
Do you have context as to like how innovative this was in terms of using kind of classical music with a modern sort of movie? Like I don't know. I'm not sure if you have any idea of that. I don't know either. But I'm just assuming that this was so ahead of its time in what he was doing with the music.
No, I love it. Yeah, I don't know. Again, I don't know if that was being done a ton or not, but I thought that worked so well with the whole vibe, especially with them just ending up in that hotel room with the classical furniture and stuff. I was like, it works so well.
Yeah, because you think the instinct would be, we're making a movie about the future and space travel. Mm-hmm. We need something that sounds more futuristic. And instead he zagged and said, nope, we're going with music that was literally made 400 years ago. It is an interesting choice.
Worked well.
Yeah, it did.
Honestly, sound, I gave a 5 out of 5 as well. Like,
yeah. This is there's some, like we said, we could nitpick a little bit with some of the overused tricks he started to lean on, but couldn't do better and be more creative with the sound than in this movie.
Yeah.
And this is one of those areas where you were talking about earlier, Aidan, where it is a shame that it is almost like parodied at this point. So much so, especially when you hear that the initial music that plays. So many movies do that now. Or I even think of like the first time I ever heard this was like the Looney Tunes was like, and it's like used so much now in ways to kind of poke fun at what 2001 did with it. And I had no idea until I watched it. This is where it came from, which is, it's pretty cool. What I also found was interesting was the term sound design for films was not invented yet. And this movie was doing so much already with that, with all those things we were talking about, with the absence, with the breathing, with the sound of the ships, that it was extremely ahead of its time. I also, in the research, found that NASA apparently, I did not do a lot of research into this to figure out its validity, but apparently they still wake up their astronauts playing the Blue Danube song. And that's how astronauts wake up when they're in space. It's like, I feel like that it's kind of sinister based on what goes on in this movie.
Yeah, that's crazy. I'd be pissed.
Yeah. And was there one part of this movie where, whether it was from one of the pieces of music or the sound design, that you thought was kind of like the best use of it?
I loved what's the name of the piece? It's used in the sequence of the flight, or when he's like getting the food and he's like drinking the different juices.
Yeah.
I thought that was just so like, oh, this is great.
Like the kind of like waltzy.
Yes, the waltz with the, I don't know, it just was very like, it's like luxurious, like this is, and it worked so well with like just the eye candy that was going on. I think that's probably off the top of my head, probably my favorite.
That was good. Nick, what about you? Any scene in particular?
No, I mean, I think this is, and I didn't validate this, but I read it on Reddit actually. this was the first time they really leaned into the lack of sound being a sound element. And I think despite what I said earlier about the length of it, the use of it is fantastic and it was groundbreaking.
Yeah.
And I have to respect that.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I agree. It was good. I was also playing in my mind as you were describing that scene, Aidan. I think that's when like the meteor is flying through as well, and you're like seeing those, and that music's playing. It's
the very like a Death Star kind of like space station shot where the space is turning, but everyone's like walking, and it's so crazy.
It's great. This one and the aesthetics, it's like some as clear as 5 out of 5s we've had at this point, especially just for what it's done, which leads in perfectly to the legacy standalone appeal.
What a segue. That was smooth.
This movie doesn't have a legacy. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
Didn't influence anything. Nobody liked it.
I don't think many people have seen it, actually. Yeah.
It is.
I hadn't even heard of it.
Yeah, it is interesting because while this is one of, like, if you look up a list of movies you should see in your life, top movies of all time, like this is going to be on there as a movie of importance. But it doesn't have the effect of it is universally beloved or something like that. So it has a very
Ocean's 11.
Yeah. It's no Argyle. It's not. It is still polarizing. Like, so Nick, especially as someone who you go into cinema, a lot of parts of the movie just don't work for you. How do you think about the legacy of 2001: A Space Odyssey after watching it now?
I don't think it's a must-watch. I do think you have to give it credit where credit is due for what it influenced and what it changed. So you need directors who are going to push the barriers with sound and visuals. Doesn't matter if the movie's a success or not. Well, I mean, it does, but like there are times where movies are unsuccessful, but they've pushed a boundary to where now other directors are seeing what's happening, other cinematographers are seeing what's happening, and they're implementing that into movies and making their art better. And maybe that's something you enjoy. So again, I don't want to watch this again. I don't think you need to watch it. However, I will recognize that it is vast. Like if this doesn't happen, a lot of my favorite movies probably don't happen, and I can respect it for that.
Yeah. It's a rational take.
Yeah, very well put.
Aidan, how do you feel about the legacy of this film?
I mean, I agree with Nick. It's just undeniably influential in a lot in the genre of sci-fi. Especially just like it was like such a, when you think about, because what comes to mind is like early sci-fi movie is Star Wars, right? When you think about, what did that pull from? And I think a lot of this was kind of trailblazing for like the aesthetics of that we accept of popular sci-fi. And there's a lot to be said about that. I also agree that this movie is probably not a must-watch. I would not say it's a must-watch. I would say you should definitely watch it if you're a sci-fi fan, and if you appreciate that, because I think any sci-fi fan in their right mind would appreciate this movie. No, I'm just kidding. Nick. I'm not coming.
I'm going to remember that.
But I mean, I would recommend it, especially for people to watch, especially people I know that I think they would like it. But I agree that it's not a must-watch.
Yeah,
what about you, Randy?
I'd surprisingly, I think I agree with that. Somebody who, and this is not, looking down upon people who just want to watch movies and just have fun either. Like if that's what you go into for a movie, you're probably not going to enjoy this as much. Maybe. And there's going to be a few of those people who watch this and are like, wow, movies can be very different than kind of a cookie cutter experience. Like I can see how this pushed the boundaries in some ways. Is the average person today is like I don't know. I think about like a teenager, like if a 16-year-old kid throws this on and watches it, are they going to enjoy it? Probably not, unless they're just a total movie nerd or a big sci-fi nerd, or they want to see what influence, like you both said, all these movies that came after it. But there is a part of me that is like, whether you enjoy it or not, it's important to experience big kind of cultural touchstones that changed how we think about different art forms, and this was one of them. And I just there's a part of me that wants to be like another Kubrick movie, A Clockwork Orange, just like strapping someone down on the chair and forcing them to watch this and be like, you may not like it at all, but I hope it does something and change the way you think about movies that came after it. So I don't know. I gave kind of a middle of the road answer there, but the legacy is undeniable. It's how many years after are we? We're coming up on 50, 46 years after, and it holds up. It looks good. It's still talked about. It's still relevant. Have a lot of younger kids seen it? Probably not.
I think it's 56, right?
Is it? Oh my God. Yeah, it's coming up on 60 years.
Yeah. And it's still just so so appealing. It's so like the fact that we're talking about what they were trying to achieve, which is like the visuals of it, is still very impressive. It's crazy.
Yeah. Who would you say won the movie?
Sci-fi fans. I don't even have a second nominees, but sci-fi fans won the movie because of not just what the movie was, but everything that came after it and was better because of what happened here.
It's like, wow, I didn't even know that was kind of a cheat. I didn't even realize that was outside of the box. I would say the Space Baby one. I don't know. Space Baby.
That's fair. That honestly might be a better answer. So.
No, sci-fi fans didn't win though. Yeah, for sure.
I'd have to say Kubrick. He set out to do something so ambitious, and he was successful in that. I don't know, if you draw up a list of movies from the 60s, this is maybe the top of the list of ones that people still watch today and at least matter for a lot of people. And not only matter, but are kind of what people consider the pinnacle of the genre in terms of what it did. So he comes out of this seeming just as perfectionistic and probably difficult to work with as ever. But he did what he set out to do, and it's still just as important today. So for me, he won the movie.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
I'll be honest. I mean, the legacy for me, it has to be a 5. I don't know what else it could be.
I gave it a 0. I had a 5 as well.
5, yeah.
I mean,
and actually, I want to change my sound score.
Yeah.
To a 4.5.
Okay.
I feel like I can't get so mad about how long some of those effects were used and not. Yeah. But I'm also not trying to double dip because I knocked it down in the plot section for that. But like 4.5 out of 5 just because of that not even a nitpick. That was a legitimate gripe. That's I think a half point there is fair.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we have too many scores. I'm not going to total them all up now between the three of us. But what I will say is, it's pretty reflective. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. Are we just going to average them?
We'll have to average them. But I mean, it is reflective. I mean, we were all lower on kind of the plot mechanisms of the movie and completely appreciative of everything that this did to push the medium of film forward at the time, which is still impressive today. Before we wrap up, Aidan, do you have any final thoughts on 2001?
I really feel like we've gone in depth and everything that I want to bring up, and I was hoping that we would touch on, and I really enjoyed hearing y'all's takes on this. It's clear y'all talk a lot about books and movies, and it was just like very well articulated. And it definitely, a lot of my perspectives were kind of changed. But so thanks for having me on.
Yeah, of course. Nick, any final thoughts?
No, I'm just going to keep them to myself. I think.
I can't wait to do our third Kubrick movie. Whatever it is, maybe we'll just have to have Aidan back on.
Oh, please.
Yeah. Before we wrap up,
smooth things over.
Yeah, it's great. Anything else you want to plug, Aidan, before we wrap up?
I released a song last month.
Nice.
It's called That Lizard. And to be honest, I think anyone that likes sci-fi will like the production style of the song. So check it out.
Awesome. You said Spotify, YouTube. Any other best places to kind of find that or follow you?
There's a music video out with it, which actually is riddled with a lot of Twilight Zone references. So definitely,
it's a really cool music video. I'll back that up. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, y'all should check it out.
yeah, everybody. Yeah, so absolutely check it out. We'll put it in the show notes as well, so people can find it. Yeah, this was fun. Thanks for listening, everybody. Next episode, I think when this comes out, we'll be covering season 2 of House of the Dragon. At this point, we're only 2 episodes into the show. Third is airing tonight, so who knows how we'll be feeling almost 2 months from now. If you have thoughts or questions you want to share, please reach out to us via email at rewatchplaypod@gmail.com or message us on rewatchplaypodcast on Instagram. Find us on all your major platforms, Spotify, Apple, wherever you get your podcast. Rate and review, 5 stars only, or we will launch you out of the pod like Hal did to Pool. I'm still like not exactly sure what happened in the movie. Like it looked like he just like karate chopped him with the pod arm or something.
That's
pretty much what happened.
It's crazy.
But if you give us 4 stars, that's exactly what's happening to you.
Roddy chops to the back of the head.
But thanks to everyone for listening. Sincere thank you to Aidan for inspiring this episode and spending some time talking through it. I'm so happy we got to do this one. This was great.
You as well. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks for joining, Aidan.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Randy.
Hal, end the episode.
What you're about to see is a nightmare. Imagine a person, no matter where they went or what they did, being followed by a creature beyond human comprehension. The dimension you're about to enter is best for the cold-blooded. No matter how hard they tried, they couldn't escape it. The creature grew ever closer. At this point, our subjects could no longer distinguish nightmare from reality.